We had a wonderful talk this morning. Some of you are here. I hope that the rest of the festival is as wonderful as it's already been. Before we begin though, special thank you to Dr. Orly Holder, the English department, and the hard work of the creative writing faculty and students for making this entire event possible. Also, thank you to Dr. Sonny Cook and the World Arts and Culture Committee for funding Dunya Mikhail's visit. And thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to see you. You might have found a flyer on your chair that has all of the events listed for this week, including the New Voices event, which will be tonight in this room. It's a showcase of creative writing students, their fiction, poetry, nonfiction, and drama pieces, and that'll be from 7 to 9 right here, so come back for it. Dunya Mikhail was born in Baghdad in 1965. In 2001, she was awarded the UN Human Rights Award for Freedom of Writing. Her collections include The War Works Hard, a finalist for the 2006 Griffin Poetry Prize and winner of the 2004 Penn Translation Fund Award. Her other book is Diary of a Wave Outside the Sea, and those are both from New Directions books. They're also both for sale over here today. They're also 10% off, so you can pick one up after the reading and she'll sign it for you, and then you got that. She lives in Michigan and teaches Arabic at Oakland University, where she'll be full-time next semester. So, it's pretty awesome. In early lines of her latest collection, Diary of a Wave Outside the Sea, Dunya Mikhail writes, "And because I don't like frames, I break them apart and release thousands of people. This is a voice in process of reflection, evaluation, and a resolve for just action. Beyond people, things and stars and birds and moments are released. These seem to be lines in the voice of any community engaged in a positive change. This could be the voice of our community, only the stanza ends stating that the reason for all of this breaking of frames and the act of emancipation is, specifically, so these artifacts and ideas disperse into a broken ash-gray horizon. It's a horizon we might not be immediately able to see from these windows, but it's one that many in this community might recognize." In an interview with NPR's Renee Montaigne, Mikhail said of growing up in Iraq that the war was like the norm. Hers is a poetry that gives us insight and a vital perspective on what we've come to know as war and the norm. Especially in El Cajon and the San Diego area, home to a healthy Chaldean population, as well as so many involved with the military, hers is a perspective speaking on family, homeland, war, and freedom that must inform our communal conversation. Her latest collection contains the original writing in Arabic with complete translation of the poetry into English, but this translation transcends a negotiation in language. It is a translation of humanity, of culture, our societies, and identity. Please welcome Dunya Mikhail.
Thank you, Adam, so much. So today in the morning, Adam, and I said, "You look so familiar. I met you somewhere." So yeah, it's right. We met some 5 years ago in Illinois, and yeah, happy to be here. So, really, I'm so excited. I feel so honored to be here, and I'm very grateful for your coming. Grateful for your faculty and the organizers, and of course you students. I thank Sydney Brown. She received me yesterday. Thank you for your invitation initially and for taking care of all these details and behind the scenes. You know what, really I feel on vacation. Your city is very beautiful. Really beautiful, but what I like the most about your city, San Diego, is that I noticed that it's full of ships and boats And this connects me somehow to my city, Baghdad, on the Tigris River, ships, boats. And actually, I wrote my very first poem in one of those ships in Baghdad. And so I thought, when I saw the ships, I maybe start this time my reading with, I'll start with that section of writing my my first poem. This comes in the Diary of a Wave Outside the Sea. It's prose, it's not poetry, and this talks about the page number and everything. So page 69, where it's mentioned that ship, and you have a lot of ships here. These are like captions of pictures from, Baghdad, my childhood, teenage. I came when I was 30 years old. In my childhood pictures, everything is black and white. In a ship on a river, I wrote my first poem about how waves are like our lives. As one reaches its end, another starts off for shore. My cousin made a paper boat from this poem and threw it into the river. We watched it drift away. There is a picture of me reading the first book I loved about an elephant who sets off for the elephant graveyard when he knows he's going to die. My mother, in her wedding dress, looks much younger than my father. I didn't see him until the wedding, she told me. In those days, husbands were like fish in the river. You couldn't know if they were good or bad. But thank God, your father was the best person in the world. Sometimes my mother wears kimonos or short skirts in the pictures. Those were the good old days, she says. A neighborhood boy is with me in one picture where my hair is in a braid. Once he handed me a letter which read, "You don't understand love, baby." Here I am crying and hiding under the bed after they cut off my braid. Somebody kissed me on the mouth, and I thought that was enough to get me pregnant. I even felt my belly to make sure. Here I'm with my grandmother eating white beans and thinking I would definitely go to heaven because she said there was a special place in heaven for people who ate white beans. My first confession was to a priest. I made up sins I hadn't committed so I could have something to say. We recited hymns in ancient Aramaic that I didn't understand. My parents always spoke to me in the modern dialect. I played chess to make the pieces match my ideas and plans. The pieces were symbols that formed possibilities with their movements, like words in poetry. I was a chess champion for Iraq, and the hours slipped away between the black and white squares. When the wars came, I quit chess. It was pointless to sacrifice all those pawns only to protect one king. I got lost one day on the way home from elementary school, so I went to the store where my grandfather bought me gum. The owner asked if I was Muslim or Christian. I didn't know. He said he wanted to take me to a mosque or church, but I wanted to be taken to my grandfather. My grandfather found me at the store and bought me gum as usual. In the square of the school with the other girls, I would recite the national anthem in the front of the flag, a homeland that spreads its wings to the horizon and wears the glory of civilization as a scarf. وطن مدى على الأفق جناحه وارتدى مجد الحضارات وشاحه. When I asked who, my teacher blamed everything on the colonizer. When I asked who that was, she said, obviously Britain. In biology class, my teacher taught us about amoebas. An amoeba has an eye and a foot, she said, but it doesn't have a real form. You can draw it any way you like. So I discovered poetry is an amoeba. It has an eye for witnessing, a foot for leaving traces, and a flexible form. But doing my homework in my room, I wrote only meaningless sentences. Some pictures I remember were never captured by a camera. My heart beating wildly at partings, bombs exploding into endless vibrations, a boat swaying as the passengers disembark, a branch trembling in the eyes of a bird, hell spilling out from a word, air escaping the place where it had lived, balls bouncing violently off the walls like a moment of anger, a crazy woman wandering with a dead dog, an agitated monkey in a lab, broken glass everywhere. These were, like captions of pictures, and I did carry some pictures in a plastic bag inside the one suitcase that I took with me when I left Iraq in 1995. And probably I read one more page from the diary of a wave outside the sea about specifically that leaving, how I left is only one page, which starts with part 2 of the diary. Like a haiku poem, my suitcase reduced the world into pictures and letters, a notebook, a pencil. The table stayed as it was, covered with paper notes and telephone numbers, layers of magazines and newspapers, and the letter opener I never had the patience to use. My letters I would rip open as fast as I could. I left Kasparov on the wall playing chess. He didn't know he was the knight of my dreams when I was a teenager. I left all my books except The Little Prince and packed my letters and pictures, though they filled up most of the space in my suitcase. 30 years of my life, I could lift it and cross the threshold with it, as I had innumerable times, coming in or going out, to school or work or the souk, or to the Writers' Union or the Summerland restaurant, to the cinema club or the neighbors. As I left, I knew I was forgetting something. It bothered me to leave it behind, but I was determined not to look back. Like Orpheus leaving the underworld, I would not look back at such a city, beautiful and ugly, lovely and hateful, strong and fragile, hot and cold, cruel and tender, intimate and indifferent. I left with that one condition, to not look back. So speaking of Orpheus, I want to remind you of this mythology of Orpheus. When he lost his wife died, Eurydice, and he decided, overcome with grief, he decided to travel to the underworld to get her back to life, and he convinced the leaders there and to let her go, but her release came with one condition, that she must be following him, be behind him, and he must not look back. So then that what happened, but just before the exit to the upper world, Orpheus looked back and she was sent back to the underworld forever. So I was always fascinated by this and kept thinking, and then I wrote a poem imagining if he didn't really kill her with that book. So, and this poem, I'll read to you since I mentioned Orpheus. It is not in my books, it's from the manuscript, which will come as a book next year. I know it's a bad idea to read from a manuscript, but I cannot resist. I always, I am excited by always the new poems. So I read that. the gaze, the gaze of Orpheus. By the way, so this new manuscript is translated by Karim James Abu Zaid, so I thank him. What if he hadn't killed her with his gaze? They'd be in the kitchen now, making coffee, or talking about the endless war, or blowing out candles for their thousandth anniversary, ghosts dancing all around them, or they would be listening to a song whose name they've forgotten, or coughing amid a million specks of flying dust, or sitting together, simply, like two statues of salt. And you know, I want to mention that this morning, the talk, Why Literature Matters, I was so happy I attended it because really, really enjoyed it. But there's something, I think Dr. Pitti was talking about monsters, and I recall in the program, in your festival, there is also another, some reading that is on the theme of zombies and monsters and things like that. And he was mentioning Hambawa, and I felt, I am Hambawa. So we Iraqis are like, we're looked at as monsters. And I have a poem also in the new book, kind of relate to that. It was not in my plan to read it, but when I heard all these monsters thing, I thought I'd read mine too. So title is Iraqis and Other Monsters. They are terrifying. Their heads are dark and tremulous. They roam the desert in the form of bulls and lions, with swords gleaming in their eyes. They rub their mustaches when they make promises or threats, or when they flirt. Smoke pours out of their massive noses and rises to the sky. They shake the earth with such strength it wakes the dead. They live in darkness without water or electricity. Dust is their food, clay their bread. They know neither sleep nor rest. The war visits them every day with the new baskets of bones. They have strange customs. The Sunnis say the Shiites all have tails. The Shiites carry keys to heaven in their pockets in case of sudden death. The Kurds take to the mountains when they fight and when they dance the dabka. The Chaldeans consult the stars in all decisions. The Assyrians put feathers on their heads to prove they vanquished the eagle. The Armenians throw themselves in the river whenever they are annoyed. The Mandeans celebrate their festivals by staying home for 3 full days. The Yazidis honor the devil and consecrate lettuce. The Turkomans are always waiting for the Sultan to return. When the sun sets and the guns fall silent, these Iraqis and other monsters take out their ouds and make music for the missing together until morning. Thank you. I have a tendency to read another from the new book, but maybe I should resist. One last one, then I go to my old book. Being Iraqi, we felt, sometimes feel like, don't we need a second chance? Because we didn't, been living all these wars. But maybe everybody needs a second chance of life. So this is called a second life. After this life, we'll need a second life to apply what we learned in the first. We make one mistake after another and need a second life to forget. We hum endlessly as we wait for the departed. We need a second life for the whole song. We go to war and do everything Simon says. We need a second life for love alone. We need time to serve our terms in prison so we can live free in our second life. We learn a new language, but need a second life to practice it. We rush around all over the place and need a second life to stop and take pictures. We write poetry and pass on and need a second life to know the critics' opinions. Suffering takes time. We need a second life to learn to live without pain. You know, some of these, back to my book, The World Works Hard, I read from, and I'll read some of the poems, either if it's short, maybe a whole poem, or if it is longer, maybe just a section, small section in Arabic for the flavor of the language. Pages numbers. Leaving Iraq, in Iraq, shoemaking is it's a popular thing, it's important. And we had a special street for that, is for shoemaking. And so I have a poem titled Shoemaker. Maybe I should read first. You know what, I read first in English, then in Arabic, so that you already know the meaning. That it's not a puzzle. Shoemaker. A skillful shoemaker, throughout his life, has pounded the nails and smoothed the leather for a variety of feet. Feet that flee, feet that kick, feet that plunge, feet that pursue, feet that run, feet that trample, feet that collapse, feet that jump, feet that trip, feet that are still, feet that tremble, feet that dance, feet that return. Life is a handful of nails in the hand of a shoemaker. It's okay? I didn't know. صانع أحذية. صانع أحذية ماهر طوال عمره يدق المسامير يسوي الجلود لمختلف الأقدام. أقدام تغادر، أقدام تركل، أقدام تغوص، أقدام تتبع، أقدام تركض، أقدام تدوس، أقدام تتهاوى، أقدام تقفز، أقدام تزل، أقدام لا تتحرك، أقدام ترتجف، أقدام ترقص، أقدام. الحياة حفنة مسامير بيد صانع أحذية. You know, Cinderella left her one shoe, and that's how the prince found her. And I left my shoe in Iraq, along with the smell of cardamom wafting from the teapot, and that huge flower, its mouth gaping like death. This was a small section, one of my poems, but you know, like Cinderella, I was in a hurry, and I was in a hurry. I was in a hurry. Yesterday, I lost a country. I was in a hurry and didn't notice when it fell from me like a broken branch from a forgetful tree. Please, if anyone passes by and stumbles across it, perhaps in a suitcase open to the sky, or engraved on a rock like a gaping wound, or wrapped in the blankets of immigrants, or cancelled like a losing lottery ticket, or helplessly forgotten in purgatory, or rushing forward without a goal like the questions of children, or rising with the smoke of war, or rolling in a helmet on the sand, or stolen in Ali Baba's jar, or disguised in the uniform of a policeman who stirred up the prisoners and fled, or squatting in the mind of a woman who tries to smile. If anyone stumbles across it, return it to me, please. Please return it to me. It's my country. I was in a hurry when I lost it yesterday. I read just first section of it in Arabic, just small section. البارحة أضعت بلدا كنت مسرعة جدا ولم أنتبه حين سقط مني مثل غصن منكسر عن شجرة لاهية. And the first job I had when I came to America, the Chaldeans usually they either go to Detroit or San Diego. The lucky ones come here, you know. And so there, first job was in a travel agency. I just stayed there like I think less than a month, and then at least I came up with a poem. The title is Travel Agency. A pile of travelers is on the table. Tomorrow their planes will take off and dot the sky with silver and descend like evening on the cities. Mr. George says that his beloved no longer smiles at him. He wants to travel directly to Rome, to dig a grave there like her smile. But not all roads lead to Rome, I remind him, and hand him a ticket for one. He wants to sit by the window to be sure that the sky is the same everywhere. And talking about first, the first movie I saw when I came to America was Titanic. And so after watching it, I wrote a small short poem titled The Jewel. It no longer stretches across the river. It is not in the city, not on the map. The bridge that was, the bridge that we wear, the Pantone Bridge we crossed every day, dropped by the war into the river, just like the blue jewel that lady dropped off the side of the Titanic. And I'll read some a little bit more, and I have in mind that I give you time for questions. I think Eugene Ionesco is the person who says that the questions we are not enlightened by the answers, but by the questions. I mean, it's the question that enlighten us, not the answers. Something like that, so it's important. So I don't promise to answer anything. It's just the questions are important. So anyway, but in the coming from Iraq that time was one of those ministers still with a label of weapons of mass destruction, etc. So this is, however, what I'm doing in response is this weapon of mass affection for you. So I was treated in the airport coming with the visa. They took pictures, a lot of pictures and fingerprints and stuff. So I was confused. I didn't know if they knew I was a poet or criminal or what is it. So I have a long poem inspired by immigration experience called America, but it's long. I want to read only part of it. Actually, in English first, as I promised you, and then maybe just small part in Arabic. America. Please don't ask me, America. I don't remember on which street, with whom, or under which star. Don't ask me. I don't remember the colors of the people or their signatures. I don't remember if they had our faces and our dreams, if they were singing or not, writing from the left or the right, or not writing at all, sleeping in houses, on sidewalks, or in airports, making love or not making love. Please don't ask me, America. I don't remember their names or their birthplaces. People are grass, they grow everywhere, America. Don't ask me, I don't remember what time it was, what the weather was like, which language or which flag. Don't ask me, I don't remember how long they walked under the sun or how many died. I don't remember the shapes of the boats or the number of stops, how many suitcases they carried or left behind. If they came complaining or without complaining, please don't ask me, America, etc. So لا تسأليني رجاء أمريكا لا أذكر في أي شارع أو مع من أو تحت أية نجمة. لا تسأليني لا أذكر لون الناس ولا تواقيعهم. لا أذكر إذا كانت لديهم وجوهنا وأحلامنا، إذا كانوا يغنون أو لا يغنون، يكتبون من اليسار أو اليمين أو لا يكتبون. Also, there's a poem I have, some, I see that sometimes there are poems I don't like, but then audience or readers like, and they remind me of them. Really, I mean, it's not my favorite, but it's their favorite. So one of those is non-military statements. And sometimes they ask me, so why is the title non-military statements? And that's a very good question. Well, if it was written here, I would just title it statements. But this was written in Iraq, and it was in response to those military statements. During the Iraq-Iran war, we had the programs, there was a program called military statements. So every day, the military statement, and there was pictures and stuff. And how many died, martyrs and stuff. And they were calling our side martyrs and our killed and stuff like that. So all this raising questions in my mind. So, but we couldn't speak really our mind, but at least in the title I put non-military statements. So I read some of these statements. Okay, first statement. Yes, I did write in my letter that I would wait for you forever. I didn't mean exactly forever. I just included it for the rhythm. Statement 2. No, he was not among them. There were so many of them, more than I've seen in my life on any television screen, and yet he was not among them. 3. It has no carvings or arms. It always remains there in front of the television, this empty chair. 4. I dream of a magic wand that changes my kisses to stars. At night, you can gaze at them and know they are innumerable. One last statement I give you. I thank everyone I don't love. They don't cause me heartache. They don't make me write long letters. They don't disturb my dreams. I don't wait for them anxiously. I don't read their horoscopes in magazines. I don't dial their numbers. I don't think of them. I thank them a lot. They don't turn my life upside down. Okay, so as we said, we Iraqis have strange habits, but one of my strange habits of me being a poet is that I'm good at math. So I was good in math and geometry and stuff like that, which is, they say it's strange for a poet, but so that's why I have this poem based on a real geometry theorem, you know. So it's a love poem, but it's called The Theory of Absence, and it's built on logical geometry. the theory of absence. The hypothesis, I am tense and so are you, we neither meet nor separate. The desired result, we meet in the absence. The proof. As tension turns people into arcs, we are two arcs. We neither meet nor separate, the hypothesis. So we must be parallel. If two parallel lines are bisected by a third line, in this case the line of tension, their corresponding angles must be equal, a geometrical theorem. So we are congruent, because shapes are congruent when their angles are equal. And we form a circle, since the sum of two congruent arcs is a circle. Therefore, we meet in the absence, since the circumference of a circle is the sum of contiguous points, which can each be considered a point of contact. Thank you. This one I read first in Arabic, so those who know some Arabic, kind of, I quiz them if it's easy, it's use simple language with pronouns, so maybe they can guess what it means, then I read it in English. ضمائر منفصلة. هو يلعب قطارا، هي تلعب صفارة، هم يرحلون. هو يلعب حبلا، هي تلعب شجرة، هم يتأرجحون. هو يلعب حلما، هي تلعب ريشا، هم يطيرون. هو يلعب جنرالا، هي تلعب جيشا، هم يعلنون الحرب. So this is the meaning of it. Pronouns. He plays a train. She plays a whistle. They move away. He plays a rope. She plays a tree. They swing. He plays a dream. She plays a feather. They fly. He plays a general. She plays people. She plays an army. They change it. They declare war. So these war poems I have, one of them is really doesn't look like a war poem. For me, you know, I lived the Iraq-Iran war, and then there was some small break, and then we had first Gulf War. I think here they were calling it the Desert Storm. Desert Shield Storm, and yeah, in Iraq they were calling it the mother of all battles, and it had, doesn't matter regardless of what it was called, but the war for us was same, that same familiar visitor, and always I noticed we would, it was started with sirens, and then the light goes off. I mean, that was the first sign that's something, every time something happens, the light goes off. And so this poem, it looks like about painting, but it's not really, but it's the artist's child. I want to draw the sky. Draw it, my darling. I have. And why do you spread the colors this way? Because the sky has no edges. I want to draw the earth. Draw it, my darling. I have. And who is this? She's my friend. And where is the earth? In her handbag. I want to draw the moon. Draw it, my darling. I can't. Why? The waves shatter it continuously. I want to draw paradise. Draw it, my darling. I have. But I don't see any colors. It is colorless. I want to draw the war. Draw it, my darling. I have. And what is this circle? Guess. A drop of blood? No. A bullet? No. Then what? The button that turns off the lights. Thank you. Maybe I should end so I give you time, right? I'm out of time. So I end with The War Works Hard, the poem, and I read just part of it in Arabic, then I switch to the English. And while I find this, I tell you, in Arabic, harb is 3 letters, and if you take the middle letter ra out, it becomes hub, which means love. So actually, it's 1 letter difference in Arabic between love and war. So sometimes you wish it's a typo or something. It's not. الحرب تعمل بجد. كم هي مجدة الحرب ونشطة وبارعة منذ الصباح الباكر توقظ صفارات الإنذار تبعث سيارات إسعاف إلى مختلف الأمكنة تؤرجح جثثا في الهواء تزحلق نقالات إلى الجرحى تستدعي مطرا من عيون الأمهات. The war works hard. How magnificent the war is, so eager and efficient. Early in the morning, it wakes up the sirens and dispatches ambulances to various places, swings corpses through the air, rolls stretchers to the wounded, summons rain from the eyes of mothers, digs into the earth, dislodging many things from under the ruins. Some are lifeless and listening, others are pale and still throbbing. It produces the most questions in the minds of children, entertains the gods by shooting fireworks and missiles into the sky, sows mines in the fields, and reaps punctures and blisters, urges families to immigrate, stands beside the clergymen as they curse the devil. Poor devil, he remains with 1 hand in the searing fire. The war continues working day and night. It inspires tyrants to deliver long speeches, awards medals to generals and themes to poets. It contributes to the industry of artificial limbs, provides food for flies, adds pages to the history books, achieves equality between killer and killed, teaches lovers to write letters, accustoms young women to waiting, fills the newspapers with articles and pictures, builds the new houses for the orphans, invigorates the coffin makers, gives grave diggers a pat on the back, and paints a smile on the leader's face. The war works with unparalleled diligence, yet no one gives it a word of praise. Thank you. Again, thank you very much. And
yeah, if anybody has any questions.
I have 2 questions, and I'd like to make a comment. My first question is, of the old Sumerian and Mesopotamian relics, how much is left? My second question is, were you allowed to leave Iraq freely, or did you have to escape?
and a comment?
Oh, the comment is your poetry is very balletic. It has a nice musical quality. You know, have you actually, thought about doing music and poetry together and making it? You have very, very musical quality. I find it rising and falling. It's almost like a 3/4 timing to a 2/3 timing. It's very, very nice.
Thank you. I didn't think of my poetry by the way as being musical, but if it's musical to you, I thank you like
yeah,
that. But yeah, thanks. First question was you were asking about the Sumerian civilization
and Mesopotamia. How much of the old relics are actually left now when
yes.
we go visit?
Yeah, you're making me remember something. We have, there's Babylon, those ancient the sites, and we have them as part of our city. And one day that there was a renovation, they painted some of those walls. I felt, what is this? We don't paint a flower or like something. We don't paint these, but you know, people didn't like that they were painting, renovating it, because they are very ancient, very ancient. They were afraid that so, and I had a friend from Sweden, journalist, and she was looking and said, I can't believe I'm in Babylon, and for me, it's, you know, what is it? So then she took a stone, one of the stones as a memory. So she said, can I take it? I said, okay, yeah, take it. So for her, like, she was so happy. So I don't know, but that's what I remember personally. I mean, it is, but in the term of, it was the first writing, the Sumerian writing was the first in history, and as somebody who cares so much about poetry, I look at these, I look at how those were written in symbols. So to say it's metaphorical is really interesting, because it's not metaphorical the way we make images, but it was already, that's the writing, was symbols, images. So it was like by default metaphorical. And then it was translated, I think, into Akkadian and other languages. But I read lamentation on Ur, the city, and then I noticed how from that time, how there were still, that time, crises, wars, and writing about lamenting, and people dying, and starting O-H, always O, and then the city or something. And I noticed in the Iraqi writings, kind of relate to that, whether they mean it or not. They say, oh, Iraq, always there are a lot of poems, they start, oh, Iraq, as if echoes that old style. And it is written in, for me, it's similar to prose poetry, and then, but now prose poetry in Iraq, in the Arab world, was started in Iraq with the free verse movement, the free verse. It started, it was not welcomed very well in the Arab, at least in the beginning. It is like they think of it as breaking so much out of the classical. But then I am thinking, well, but it relates to the real origin of the Sumerian, because Sumerian didn't have that the way classical. It is more, it's modern for me. So it's interesting. Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
How do you find that your work is received by American audiences?
Received, as you see here, you are very nice. You know, I feel spoiled when I go to the poetry people. I see them kind, nice, and well, through the correspondence and you know, the emails and everything. Actually, it's I was lucky. I was among the lucky ones. And I'll tell you something ironical. When I was leaving Iraq, and oh, I forgot about. I'll come back to your other question. Leaving Iraq, you mentioned. When I left Iraq, I had to leave right away. There was a friend. And although that friend knew about the risk of staying for me, he warned me of this. He said, but how can you go to America? Poetry is marginal in America. So it's for him worse than death. That it is, you don't, so tell you the truth, when I was inside, our impression was people in America, they only care about novels. I mean, nobody's going to listen. Because in Iraq, it's a major genre, poetry. People love, you know, it's a tradition that you listen to poetry. Arab people are oral more than, you don't see people reading in the trains or waiting. They kind of talk, read poetry, recite, things like that. It's more audio. So it is, they like to listen to poetry, and they think it should be recited in a certain way. I don't recite it the way I'm supposed to. But I mean, they think of it so that was a warning. But so I came with expectation, it's like marginalized and stuff, but I had to leave. And it's a long story about all that. But that was not true. I didn't feel it was marginal. I mean, I felt it was, I felt so much, there was so much attention, more than I expected. I don't know also about the wars and the crisis played a role in that, but also in addition, it's true that sometimes the events make you kind of want to listen more to people from those areas, but in addition, I still felt it was great attention to poetry. Yes?
For your poem pronouns, I found myself kind of lost in a very good way, trying to figure out what it means. So I think it has a variety of meanings, but I was wondering where you were going with pronouns and the process behind creating it.
The question is about the poem pronouns. He, she, they, and in the new book I have more pronouns with you, I, we, and this is just to prove I know all of my pronouns. You know? This poem was written in Iraq, published in the Iraqi media, and it kind of got attention. It was liked by a lot of readers then, because it's simple. It's very simple, and it gives and by the way, in Iraq, the way you write as a writer in Iraq is not the same way. Even the same person. I mean, here you can be as realistic as you want. You can say anything you want. In Iraq, you have to be not more poetical, but you have to use more metaphors to hide your meaning under layers of meanings, like an onion. You have to have your poem as an onion, protected. And hoping that the censors are not good readers. They're not going to understand what you mean, so that you are not at risk. Because some writers were really, we were seeing them disappear because of their frank writing, and I was not ready to lose my life. I didn't want to. So I was kind of careful with what to choosing my words, and kind of always expecting, if I'm questioned, what would I say? So I remember the person who published this poem, he was the editor of that Iraq newspaper in the cultural page. He was another poet, also a good poet, also a sincere one. So he said, Dunya, I'm afraid, this poem, I like to really very much publish it, but if somebody asks you, who's the general, say Schwarzkopf. So we always had those things in advance in case. I know this is not an answer to your question. You meant something else. I mean, who knows how I wrote it? I mean, what I was thinking, but that's what I remember about it. Yes.
For any of your writing in the past, did you ever have any trouble with the censors? Like, did you ever get any trouble with them?
The question is, did I have trouble with censors? And this is back to now this way I can answer both of your questions that are related. Yes, especially with the Diary of a Wave Outside the Sea. This is two sections, two parts. Part one was written in Iraq and published in Iraq just immediately, shortly before I left. And it was, that's the number one reason. I mean, I left because of writing, of poetry. But poetry in return saved my life. And in the morning I was listening to this outstanding presentations, and one of them by a student. And I will maybe try to be brief how it saved my life. But there is like zoos, for example. I couldn't, as I said, I cannot name things by their names. So instead of naming, let's say, a leader name, I give Zeus as a mythology leader who was cruel with the people and things like that. So it's a reflection on war, but full of metaphors, symbols, the part one. So, and when it was published, they already, again, the censor asked me to cut some passages. I said, it's very short. Kind of cut it. That's true, it's very short. Was like, imagine like half of this. The book is half because the part two of it is written and published here. So I said, I can't cut sections. He said, I'm going to write this so that I'm going to write this comment. So he's saying, but then you do whatever. So I didn't cut those sections. And then there was interrogation. I was asked, what do you mean by this or that? And there were people in the departments that they knew things that they told me that as soon as possible we should leave, because there's a report that there's still investigation that you are what they describe anti-revolution. I don't know what those. I was so innocent, honestly. I didn't know what those big things are. I mean, I write like as innocent as a child, but not those so innocent. Tell you the truth. But so they use big words, anti-revolution or something like that. So I was really scared, and my brother had the wedding 2 weeks after. And I wanted to stay, but he said, you know, I'll send you a video, just go. So, how did I live through poetry? I would not be able to live that fast without it. My brother took me to the passport office. There was somebody he knew. So in order to leave, it was not easy in Baghdad. And I was working for the Baghdad Observer. I mean, a leave of absence would take forever. And in the time being, every day is in a danger. So what we did is that we talked with that. So the passport officer wanted to help me, of course. I'm not going to mention all the details and reasons, but he changed my profession in the passport from journalist to poet. And now I still keep that passport. It says the profession of passport bearer is poet. I can't, I'm proud of it because it's not my. So anyway, the border, as a poet, they don't, as a journalist, you need leave of absence or any.
Yeah,
but as a poet, you need no leave of absence from anywhere. Nobody needs you. No, you don't belong to anywhere that they claim you, that you escaped. So poetry, that's how poetry saved my life. I could live through that the fastest way. Yes.
I have a question. How is it writing now without those constraints? I know that you've been here since